Hello and welcome to another tutorial video for closed-end fund mastery. In today's tutorial video, we're going to expand upon the advanced charting techniques that we went over in a couple of my previous videos. And we are going to also revisit those charting techniques for those of you that have missed it. And these will all be compiled into one advanced charting tutorial video, which will be posted on the Help tab in Closed-End Fund Mastery. Before we get started, I would like to update for those of you that subscribe to my YouTube channel for in-depth closed-end fund material. I still plan on coming out with the previously announced video. I recently called it the 4 Mysteries of Closed-End Funds. That video now has a new working title of 5 Closed-End Fund Misconceptions. Release date to be determined. The purpose of today's video is because I made some major changes to the owner's equity chart on the fund stats page in Closed-End Fund Mastery. It's beautiful, isn't it? But before we discuss the major updates to owner's equity, we are going to do the chart refresher course, which is filtering the income chart. And I'll also very quickly go over how filtering will come in handy when using the other charts on the fund stats page. Then after we conclude that topic, we will go in and explore the new owner's equity chart, which will compare side by side to the old owner's equity chart using actual examples. We'll show you how to benefit from using filtering on that chart, how you can modify the chart yourself by using different chart types, which will allow you to visualize data to your liking. And then finally, we're going to show you how to change the series order so you can prioritize certain data types over others. So now let's get on with the tutorial, beginning with the chart refresher, income chart filtering. Okay, I'm going to try to get through all these tips as quickly and efficiently as possible. And when I'm finished, we're going to take a quick look at the fund GOF using charts to see if, despite the fund running in deficits for quite some time now, try to determine how secure their distribution is. Okay, let's get started on our tutorial. In this example, we're just going to look at a fund at random. We're going to choose the fund AWP, Aberdeen Global Premier Properties. We're going to head over to the income chart. You see we have a time spanning from April 2019 to October 24. They just recently reported. To utilize advanced charting techniques using closed-end fund mastery, click on any chart, and if there's options available, you'll see 3 icons pop up to the right. The first icon is chart elements. You can toy around with these if you like. They're not essential to the chart. Second one looks like a little paintbrush. You can see you can change the different chart types. But if you do this, you'll have to change the chart type every time you open up a new report. And just so you're aware, if you choose this option, you will overwrite any customization that I've built into the chart, which might affect the appearance of the data. Also, regardless of what changes you do make to the chart, if you want to reset it back to the previous state, you can undo what you did, or you can close the file without saving. And then when you reopen the file, all the original settings will be placed back in. And then lastly, looks like a little funnel. If you click on that, it brings up all the series: net investment income, realized gain, unrealized, shareholder distributions, and all the categories, which are the actual time frames the funds reported. Now let's say while we're here, we want to take a close look at net investment income compared to shareholder distribution. Click apply. And you can see that the fund AWP is considerably shy of maintaining their distributions with net investment income alone. You can go back to the filter, add in realized gains, click apply, and you can see it's not doing much better, and in many cases it's actually doing worse. So we can go ahead and, let's say, add back unrealized gains. Okay, AWP probably wasn't the best example, but let's just say for the sake of argument that all three income types were hovering near or around the shareholder distribution line, but you couldn't quite tell if the distribution coverage was being met because of these outliers of unrealized performance from the fund. So to get a more accurate reflection of the fund's performance during normal periods, we'll just eliminate these 3 periods. You could remove unusual points in time to get a more accurate picture of how the fund performs without extreme events. When you're done, just click Select All twice. Bring everything back, apply, and there you go. Now, other ways you could use the filtering feature to help you in charts. Let's go to the fund ASGI, the fund's distribution history. Now, this particular fund, using this particular chart, is pretty much useless because the remaining distributions in relation to the actual shareholder distributions is a flat line. It really doesn't give us an indication of anything. And the reason for this is because when the funds first started, its first reporting period in September 2020, they made no distributions, which created an infinity loop, and it'll create an error. So what I had to do is I had to put $1 as a distribution so it wouldn't create an error all across the chart. And as a consequence of that, it helped us avoid the error issue, but it gives us an unbelievably huge number of distributions remaining amount. So by using the filter function, we can isolate that particular point in time, remove it, apply it, and then it makes the chart more relevant. Another way that's useful, looking at the fund MXF, the Mexico fund, if we head to the score history chart, again, we see chart rendered irrelevant because there was a period of time where the Mexico fund did not pay any distributions, which again would have created an infinity loop. So again, to remedy the option, you pull up the filter, you delete, or not delete, but uncheck those periods, apply it, and then the chart becomes relevant. Another useful feature of filtering is reducing the clutter on the chart so it's more readable. This also helps with the distribution change chart, where you can see we keep track of the distribution amount and the percentage change, but sometimes the amount and the percentage change overlaps, so you can deselect one of the series to make the chart more legible. And when you're done, try to remember to reselect everything, but if you forget, like I said, you can just close the file without saving, and then when you open it back up, it returns to its original state. All right, that ends the rehash of advanced charting techniques. Now we're going to move on to the second part of the advanced charting techniques as they apply to the improvements I've made to the owner's equity chart. Now, I was very reluctant about even making these changes to the owner's equity chart because although the current version is not a Mona Lisa or a girl with a pearl earring or even dogs playing poker, it's still a very illustrative chart. Now, because I have members joining every day, if you're not quite familiar with how the owner's equity chart works, the owner's equity chart contains 2 balance sheet items represented by the purple and the green lines. The purple is undistributed earnings or accumulated earnings, and the green line is paid in capital. Undistributed or accumulated earnings consists of all 3 income types: net investment income, realized gains, and unrealized gains, minus all expenses and all distributions paid to date for the life of the fund. The paid in capital portion of the chart is funds derived from rights ownerships, the initial investment into the fund, reinvested distributions, shelf offerings at the market facilities, and such. And then again, I've mentioned before, unique to closed-end fund mastery is that I overlay the cash flow item shareholder distributions onto the owner's equity chart so that you can get a visual on whether the distributions are easily being made with the combination of undistributed earnings and paid-in capital. As you can see here for the fund EOS, when they last reported in June 2024, after the distribution was made of $41.9 million, they still had a balance of paid-in capital of $468 million and undistributed accumulated earnings of $714 million. And then just by taking a visual eye shot at this chart, you can clearly see that the fund EOS has ample firepower to maintain its current distribution. Now, the only reason I'm doing the upgrade to the owner's equity chart is specifically because of the advanced charting techniques I'm showing you in this video. And I honestly believe you being armed with this information is going to make the owner's equity chart a much more powerful tool. So just briefly, just to discuss the changes that I made to the owner's equity chart, I stacked paid-in capital on top of undistributed accumulated earnings, and these two numbers combined equal the fund's net asset value. Now here's another beautiful thing about the owner's equity chart in closed-end fund mastery. Common practice would normally be building a base of paid-in capital and then adding the undistributed earnings on top, similar to a break-even analysis chart where you build a base of fixed expenses, and then on top of that, for every unit you sell, it incrementally adds to the fixed expenses based on the number of units sold. But because I stacked paid-in capital on top of undistributed earnings, it allows you to see the proportional relationship of the fund's distribution in relation to a fund's undistributed accumulated earnings. Now again, with the fund I just purchased on the pullback in December 18th, the fund IDE, I mentioned that the fund was using its paid-in capital to purchase shares back at a discount. Now, had I not known this, it would have looked, by glancing at this chart, that the fund was in serious trouble. But at the same time, the undistributed earnings were increasing. Now, because of the way the old chart is set up, you would have to do an eyeball shot of the decline in paid-in capital and the increase in the undistributed accumulated earnings to determine if the decline in paid-in capital was outpacing the incline of undistributed earnings. In other words, after the distributions were made, would the net effect of those two slopes be a negative for the fund? Now, in my personal view, in the long term, it looks like the paid-in capital decline is far more aggressive than the recent incline in the fund's accumulated undistributed earnings. But when you stack the two on top, it doesn't really look severe at all. It actually looks like it's holding its own. PDI. After the crash in 2020, they were forced to take drastic measures to avoid a distribution cut, and they did this in the form of absorbing some of their sister funds, which increased their capital base almost 3 times. And you can see that they've been raising very large sums of capital ever since, while at the same time the strain on their distribution from all those additional shareholders has taken their accumulated undistributed earnings lower and lower, although now it does appear that it might be turning the curve, and I'm going to show you why when we go into our GOF example. But again, once you stack these two items one on top of the other, the swings do not seem that violent at all. And as far as shareholder distribution as a percentage of net asset value, the situation doesn't look that bad at all. Now here's the fund NEA. This is a municipal fund. You can see here in April 2022, the interest rate situation hasn't been kind to these types of funds. As you can see here on the distribution change history for the fund NEA, in April 2022, they had to cut their distribution 10%. They had to cut it again in October, 15%, and then another 21% in January of 23. Of course, the situation's calmed down a bit since, and they have since been able to reinflate their distributions. And you can see here over the last 18 months, their undistributed accumulated earnings situation has improved significantly, even though they're still in the hole. ASGI, it's a relatively new fund. Its inception date was in 2020. When the fund last reported in September 24, the fund did have accumulated earnings. However, the fund has pulled back drastically and has now taken this number into the negative. However, after a massive reorganization in March of 2023, the beefed up capital in their balance sheet should keep their distribution relatively stable. And I say relatively stable because the fund has been flirting with a penny increase decrease over the past few months. Okay, we're almost done here. This video will likely be condensed further, so it will just contain the nuts and bolts of advanced charting using closed-end fund mastery when it reaches the help tab. Real quickly, we're going to go through the neat stuff you can do using, well, we're using the new owner's equity chart as an example, but you could actually apply all of these techniques to most, if not all, of the charts that are contained within closed-end fund mastery. So let's get started. Here's the owner's equity chart for ASGI, but just for the heck of it, let's just punch in a fund, BTO. Look how beautiful that chart is. When you look at that chart, I don't think there's any doubt on whether or not the fund is capable of making its distribution obligation. And I remember this fund clearly because when the market crashed in 2020 and I just rolled out closed-end fund mastery, BTO stuck out like a sore thumb. And using and investing in BTO with the help of DivX, I wound up raking in, I believe, 175% return on this thing. Anyway, on to the features. First, if you don't like the new format and you hope to see the old format back, you can right-click on the series. Click on the Change Series Chart Type option. In this box below, you can see the three different series: undistributed earnings, paid-in capital, shareholder distributions, and the chart type. Shareholder distribution is a line chart. You can see that over here, and you can see that undistributed earnings and paid-in capital are stacked. You also have an option over here for secondary access. That's not necessary here. If you wanted to go back to the old way, you click on the arrow button. You can see a list of options. You would want to click on the line. Click OK, and there you have it. If you change your mind and think the new way is better, you can click the undo button, and boom, you're right back to where you were. You can also change the series chart type. You can see all these options over here on the left, but you can check the column. It's currently stacked, but you can also set it side by side, and that turns everything into a bar chart. Click undo. Change series chart type. Side by side. It also changed paid-in capital because it's also stacked. Click OK. It sets undistributed earnings and paid-in capital side by side, but it keeps the shareholder distribution as a line chart. Undo. You can also still do filtering in this chart. Let's say you want to eliminate the paid-in capital. Apply. You can see the relation of shareholder distributions to accumulated earnings. If you right-click on the plot area of the chart, and let's say you don't like the fact that I put undistributed earnings on the bottom and paid-in capital on top, you can select data. You can select paid-in capital, move the series up, and you can see it put undistributed earnings on top of paid-in capital. We're going to cancel that, and that's it. All the new features you can take advantage of in the new owner's equity chart. Now, as promised, we're going to do a quick chart evaluation of the fund GOF. We're going to go to the income chart. You can see that all three income sources are painfully shy of meeting the outgoing distribution amount. So how are they maintaining their distributions? If we go to the fund flows chart, you can see that the distribution here, which is currently comprised of distributions from earnings and return of capital, has been met with the use of primarily share transactions, translation, shares sold. If we see that's how the distribution is being met, then we want to know what procedure these new shares are being sold at. If we go to the alerts history page, other than the huge capital influx from the reorganization from mergers back in November of 2021 and May of 2022, the fund GOF frequents sales of its shares using what's called an ATM facility or at the market facility. And what this is funds being sold on the open market through a third party. And with a fund trading at nearly a 31% premium, those shares are fetching a pretty penny on the open market. Now, when those shares are sold, it creates a credit into the common stock account for the amount of the par value of each share sold. But more importantly, an additional credit for any additional amounts paid by investors is credited to the additional paid-in capital account, not an income account. So if we head on back to GOF and then we go to the owner's equity chart, you can see that the increase in the paid-in capital portion of GOF is primarily from the premium fetched on those shares sold at the market. And just like PDI, it's too soon to say, but it does appear that this strategy appears to be working by narrowing the deficit of their accumulated earnings from $293 million to $165 as of their last report in May of 2024. So we'll know by the end of this month, January 2025, when their November 2024 report comes out, on whether or not this trend is continuing. If so, this will solidify the distribution in the short term. Okay, so that wraps up this video. I would like to point out that regarding the new video coming soon, the 5 CEF misconceptions, 2 of those misconceptions were pointed out in this video. Do you know what they were? Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, like and subscribe. If you would like to know more about closed-end fund mastery, there are links in the description below. There is also a promo for a 30-day free trial, depending on the month. It could be 4 to 5 free reports. You could also just simply ask for a free report, entering free report in the subject line of your email to TheDividendTimes@outlook.com.